beautiful, my name is Anastasia Hunu, and today we are going to be doing a reaction video. I found some videos on TikTok that I wanted to react to that are all pertaining to marriage and what different people say about marriage, different advice or whatever it might be. I really haven't thoroughly watched them because I wanted to give you guys my full reaction, my full real opinion on it. If you're new here, I post a lot about my journey as a young wife and things I'm learning throughout the way, and I am really excited for this video. So without further ado, let's get right into the content.
Couples who live together before marrying have nearly an 80% higher divorce rate than those who do not.
Which is crazy because you'd think you'd be the opposite because, like, for example, I lived with my boyfriend for 5 years and we broke up because we knew we weren't compatible because we lived together.
Because living together is the way you find out.
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
Did you and Graham?
No.
Which I didn't know that until yesterday.
Do you know why no one knew it?
Why?
Because I used to be like, I thought that was shameful.
No, I would.
Because I was the minority of it. Like, I never told anybody that Graham and I never lived together because all of my friends did. I'm like, of course the natural step would have been to move in together. You save on rent. I get to know how you do the dishes. We get to do all of these things beforehand before we get married. But we literally came back from the honeymoon and moved in.
Okay, let's talk about it. Because as you just saw in the video, people are 80% more likely to get divorced if they live together before they get married. And here's my theory on it. I don't know, I didn't look this up. But I think it's because when you live together before you get married, you go into it with a mentality of, let's see if this actually works out. You know, you go into it with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You are basically just going to it. You're going into it thinking, I want to find out what's wrong about them and let's see if this actually works out. And then you get married and then, you think that something's going to change when you get married, but nothing really changes. It's really that different mentality, because when you get married, right from the jump, you guys decide to move in together after you get married, you go into it with the mentality of, we got married, we're going to figure out how to work together and we're going to make this work, right? Like she just said, oh, I need to see if you do the dishes right. Okay, when my husband and I, we moved in together after we got married, he did the dishes completely different than I did. We grew up completely different, right? But now that we're married, we didn't go into it thinking, oh, if he does the dishes wrong, I don't want to live with him because we're not compatible. No, we figure out how to be compatible. We figure out how to do the dishes, how we're going to do the dishes together. And yeah, he does the dishes completely different than me. He does the dishes sometimes and they're completely in the dishwasher, I would think wrong in my head, right? But we figure out how to be compatible. We figure out how to make it work for us. And that's why marriage is, when you go into it with that mentality of, we're going to make it work no matter what, that is just completely different. And I think that's why more people last when you go into a marriage with that mentality, and when you live together with that mentality of, no matter how they live, I decided to commit to this person, so I'm gonna figure out how to make it work. Instead of thinking, I'm gonna go into living with this person and I'm gonna see if it's gonna work out or not, and I'm gonna figure out all the flaws and then I'm gonna figure out a way to get out. You know what I'm saying? It's just definitely different. And I could see people's thought process of why they might think it's going to work out better if you live together before marriage, because the world says, well, we have to figure out if we're sexually compatible too, right? We have to figure out if I like the way that he does things. We have to figure this out. But it doesn't work out that way. And by the way, sexual compatibility is something that the world has made up. It's something that the world has made up. People think, oh, if we're not good together sexually, then it's just not going to work in marriage. When marriage is supposed to be the first time that you have sex. And then when you guys are committed to that other person, then, okay, maybe the first time wasn't the best thing, but over time it's going to become even better and better, right? Because you guys are going to learn about each other. So sexual incompatibility is not really a thing, because you guys can always become better at that as well. So I think there's a lot of things that the world is putting into a marriage, which is supposed to be something that no matter what, you guys figure it out, you guys grow. And that's the beautiful thing about marriage, I think. It's one of the most beautiful things for you guys to come together. Yeah, sometimes it's kind of a mess at the beginning because you guys have never lived together, but it's so beautiful when you guys have figured out, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're not going to do. This is an old habit that you had from when you were growing up that isn't really going to work for us. So let's like work together and, you know, compromise a little bit, and let's figure out a way that works for both of us. And it's so beautiful when that happens because you guys are both basically like figuring it out. And I think it's wonderful. So yeah, there's my little tidbit on that. I think it's much better when you just come together and get married and then move in together. Like I said, you guys are coming to it with the idea of, I am committed to this person. So even if he does the dishes wrong, even if he, you know, leaves clothes wherever, we're going to figure out how this is going to work and how this is going to get better so that marriage over time, you know, so that we stay together, because you promised that when you guys did the vows and different things. Okay. So there's that. All right, let's go to the next video. Okay. So let's read this really quick. Y'all will soon understand that being in a healthy relationship will teach you that there is no such thing as this is who I am, take it or leave it. When you genuinely love a person, you work on those negative or toxic traits, those specific aspects, and you learn to communicate. You listen to each other's feelings, thoughts, and emotions, and encourage individuality. But y'all not ready for that conversation. Okay, so let's talk about this for a moment. I thought this was pretty interesting when I listened to this because the first part is very true. People go into marriage and they say, oh, you're just going to have to take me like how I am. You know, I was born this way. I was born with a very trashy attitude. I snap back at people, and that's just how I was raised. Okay. This is why the Bible says for us to tame the tongue. This is why the Bible talks about us being gentle, having that gentle spirit, right? One of the fruits of the Spirit is gentleness. And it talks about a lot of different traits that we're supposed to have as believers, right? And it's very often that us, especially as women, but as a Latina woman, growing up, a lot of times you get the, oh, Latinas are crazy, you know, they're very loud, or maybe you're different. Maybe you're a certain culture and people tell you that you're supposed to be a certain way because that's just how that culture is. But it's actually not cute to be that way. It's not cute to have a lot of attitude and just be rude to your husband, right? And this is where that this is who I am, take it or leave it mentality comes in. And I think it's very prideful as well because we don't realize how detrimental it is to our husbands to have this type of mentality, or wife, you know, if you're a man watching this. But we don't realize how detrimental it is to the other person when we have this just take me like how I am mentality. When you will realize that in marriage, you will change to stay married. And this is not something that I got from myself. I actually saw this from another YouTuber, forgot her name, but she talked about how you will change to stay in your marriage. And when she said that, I was like, that's so true, because I have changed so much. And so has my husband ever since we've been married. And we've only been married for like a year and a couple months now, but we've both changed a lot to better our marriage. You will change to be married, like you to stay married. You will change. There's different aspects that you'll change about yourself. Like me, I had that snappy attitude. I thought it was, you know, it's just me. It's just who I am. I'm just loud. And yeah, there's people that are more, you know, outgoing than other people. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being actually rude and very just disrespectful and saying that's just who I am. That's not how we're supposed to be. That's why the Bible tells us to be respectful to our husbands, because first of all, it's hard for us to do, right? But there's aspects of yourself that you have to change sometimes for the betterment of yourself and for the betterment of your relationship. And after I changed my disrespectful attitude, you know, things got a lot better. And like I said in a couple other videos, embracing gentleness, embracing that the fruits of the Spirit. And I'm not sure if this person is coming from a Christian perspective or anything, right? Because I don't know. But I do know that he's so right that we shouldn't be coming into our marriage or being in our marriage saying that you just need to take me as I am if you are hurting the other person by the way that you're acting, right? Talk about the second part too. When you genuinely love a person, you work on those negative or toxic traits, those specific aspects, and you learn to communicate. You listen to each other's feelings, thoughts, and emotions, and encourage individuality. Okay. Yes. Yes, I totally agree that when you actually love the other person, when you're in it for the long haul, when you know that something is not good in your marriage and it's from you and you're causing it, I think that, yes, it's so true. If you know that you have negative or toxic traits, you should change that. You shouldn't expect the other person to just take you like how you are. And like I said, I don't subscribe to the, oh, I'm just a crazy Latina woman anymore, at least, right? I don't think it's cute. I think it's very beautiful and amazing to be feminine, respectful, gentle with my husband. And because of that, he's been even more gentle with me, right? He's been loving me even more. It's because when we both put work into our marriage and when we both have changed for the betterment of the other person, our marriage has become even better. And why? It's because we love that other person. Loving is choosing to serve and love that other person. When you serve that other person, you are willing to change when you know that you are hurting that other person by the way that you act. So yeah, I completely agree. You have to communicate. You have to learn how to communicate in the way that the other person takes it well. Like me, I realized very quickly that being loud and obnoxious and disrespectful to my husband wasn't going to get me the outcomes that I desired. And it wasn't going to let him be happy either. Like, it wasn't good for our relationship. So when I learned that being a gentle woman, giving him gentle answers, being that more nurturing, having that more nurturing spirit was going to be better for our relationship, then I knew I had to change. And I knew I had to learn how to communicate with my husband the right way, which is just a loving, respectful manner. And he loves it. He loves it. Okay? Like, seriously, if you've never spoken to your husband in a gentle, loving spirit when it comes to things, just try it. Things will switch up. Things will switch up. So there's that. So yeah, I totally just agreed with most of this. And I do agree that people are not ready for this conversation. There's people that are watching this right now and probably don't like anything that I just said, because people are not ready to hear that there's things that will change about yourself if you really do want to stay in a happy marriage. Sometimes there's things that will change, you know, unless you come into the marriage perfect. I don't know how often that happens, but there's that. Let's go to the next video.
If we're not following Jesus, we shouldn't be expecting our wives to follow us.
100%.
Like, straight up, because here's the reality. The first priority for our wives is submission to Christ.
Right.
And if we as husbands are not submitted to Christ and following him, why would we ever expect our wives to be submitted to us and follow us?
Right.
Now, our wives can love us and our wives can serve us, but to argue that you can just be a man who doesn't follow Christ and your wife needs to submit is garbage.
Yeah.
And it's unbiblical, right? You want your wife to follow you? Be a man and follow Jesus and give her a reason to.
Yeah.
And what that means is you love her like Christ loved his church. And you go first in everything, because that is what Christ did. He went first, he loved first, he gave first, he forgave first, he empathized first, right?
Yeah.
This is what we do as husbands. And again, like, none of that comes naturally for us as men, which is why we got to walk in step with the Holy Spirit of God each day, because only he can do that kind of work in our lives.
Wow. That was really good. And I completely agreed with that. I think that this society, especially like the red pill people, I don't know, all those different, a lot of these different relationship podcasts in the world are saying that women need to submit to their man. And yeah, women should submit to their man. But the world is saying that we should submit to our man no matter what. Even if they don't follow God, we need to be submitting to the man. That's what the world is saying, that we need to follow and submit to a man who doesn't submit to God. But the Bible says that the head of a woman is man and the head of man is Christ, right? So there is supposed to be an order. It's supposed to be that our man is submitted to Christ and we are submitted to our man who is submitted to Christ. And when you are submitted to a man who is submitted to Christ, you know that he's making decisions that are going to benefit the family, that are going to benefit you. Well, it's really just the way that it's supposed to work. And yeah, our first job is to be submitted to Christ, right? We're supposed to be submitted to Christ. If our husband is telling us to do something that doesn't align with Christ, then we're not supposed to do that, right? Our first obligation is to Christ. And then it's to our husband, who is supposed to be submitted to Christ, like I said. If you are a non-Christian person watching this, this is why Christian women say that they submit to their husbands. It's because it's a lot easier to submit to a man when you know that he's submitted to God. I mean, it's hard sometimes, for sure. But when you know that he's submitted to God, you know that you can rest assured that you're walking in the right path, right? I think that it's so true. Like he said, there's a lot of people out there that just say, oh, submit to a man, submit to a man. Like, why am I submitting to a man who doesn't follow God? I want to submit to my husband who follows the Lord, who loves God, who listens to God, who prays, who I know has good intentions for me as his wife. Why? Because he is a man of God and he listens to God, like how I said. So, yeah. And I love what he said at the end, that men are supposed to love their wives like Christ loved the church. Because we talk a lot about the Proverbs 31 woman, but we don't talk about the Ephesians. I think it's Ephesians 5. Man, I think it's Ephesians 5, but I'll put the verse here. But it talks about how men should love and cherish their wives like Christ loves the church. And it says that men should lay down their life for their wife. It says that men should not speak harshly to their wives and love their wives and really just, like I said, cherish their wives. So, yeah, I love that he's saying this because, yes, it is very important for wives to submit to their husbands. But it's also very important for husbands to love their wives like Christ loves the church. And I feel like we don't put as much emphasis on that, on what the Bible calls for men to do. So I think that's pretty awesome. And I'll definitely probably bring my husband on sometime for us to talk about different things like that, different topics like that. If you're interested in that, then definitely let me know in the comments. But yeah, I really thought that was great. And I think that more men of God should talk about that. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. I just have a hard time watching videos when people say that women need to submit to their man, but they're not even talking about how men should submit to God. A lot of times they just want a woman to be under their control. It's about the order that God has created the marriage to be and the marriage to work. Well, those are all the videos for today. If you found those interesting, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know if you think I'm wrong, you think I'm right, if you agree, disagree. I'd love to talk with you in the comments. If you have any suggestions of other videos that you'd like to see in the future, please let me know in the comments. I love taking your guys' suggestions and I'd love to know what you guys have to say. That being said, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.